Hello everybody, it's Glass Half Dead here, and today I want to do a beginner's guide for the Adeptus Custodes Codex, the new one obviously. Except there's a little bit of a twist, because when I say it's a beginner's guide, what I mean is, I'm the beginner, and I need you to guide me. Except that doesn't really work in a format where I have to record a video before the conversation can begin. So, first things first, please hit those comments and tell me where I'm right and wrong in this video. You are the experts, I'm just the dude with the book, and I'm going to tell you the rules, and hopefully I'm going to give you my interpretation of what I think is good and what I think is bad. Except I'm not going to just go through the entire book. This is no man reads book. I love those videos, but this isn't one of them. I'm going to go through every datasheet, we will get all of those, and then I'm going to go ahead and give context to those. You see, in a codex, there's a lot of rules. I'm very confused, I'm a beginner, I'm a noob. So many stratagems, I'm not reading those to you. So many relics, I'm not reading those to you. But what I will do, hopefully, is go through every datasheet, and when I see a datasheet, I will then give a little bit of context by saying, this is a stratagem that I believe is valid for it. And then, hopefully, in the comments, you can say, good spot, Glass, but actually, look at this one instead. I also want to get it out there straight away. As mentioned, I'm a beginner. I'm not looking at creating a top tier competitive codex. What I have in front of me is my army. I think it's like 1,300 points of Custodes, roughly. This lot here is exactly 1,000 points. I've just put that together for a battle report I'm going to do, which is up right now, by the way. If you want to see 1,000 points of Custodes going against 1,000 points of Genestealer Cults, check that out. I have no Telemon Dreadnoughts from Forge World, and I never intend to buy them. So I'm not looking at how can I crush a tournament. I don't care. Buy 9 Telemon Dreadnoughts, I suspect, because before this released, that's how you won with Custodes in the current 40k meta, and everything that kind of buffs the new Custodes army is based on keywords of just what they have, so the shield host and the fact that they have the keyword Adeptus Custodes. And you know what? So do the Telemon Dreadnoughts. So unless they completely change their points, all of this, pretty irrelevant, and you probably want to just keep on doing whatever you were doing before because now your models are just better. However, with that said, I don't want to just stumble my way through every datasheet and, you know, it's not going to be very fun to watch as I stumble and mumble and don't really know what I'm talking about. So I do have an expert. Now, I'm a beginner, but this guy, he is an expert because he has played, can you believe it, 3 games with Custodes at 1,000 points. And according to, you know, Games Workshop's polls, 70% of their customers don't actually play the game. So he is legit an expert. So I'd like to say hello Glass, thank you for joining us.
Hello past Glass and listeners, what's up?
So let's just jump straight into it with this weird meta thing we're doing here. Thank you for joining me. What's new about this codex compared to the old codex?
The big new things in this codex are of course the Katahs and the fact that sisters can now be troops. And yes, they're included in the rest of the codex too, but troops are what really matter. Aside from that though, I would really say that the Adeptus Custodes still are the same faction, just with a few minor, and I do mean minor, points tweaks here and there. Apart from in the case of the HQ choices, where I think they've actually made it very clear who they want you to take and who they don't want you to take. Until, of course, you have bought your models and they then do a balance patch update to the points.
Okay, now from what little I know about 40k, troops, good. Number of models on the board, good. So I'm assuming therefore that the Anathema Psychana, the Sisters of Silence, being troops is actually a really positive thing.
Absolutely unsurprisingly, you are completely correct that Sisters being troops is incredibly good for the Custodes. In fact, I'd go so far as to say that it is quite likely we're going to see optimized lists for the Adeptus Custodes that have no custodian guards. You might run for your troops only the Sisters of Silence now, or the Anathema Psychana.
Okay, and the other question now, Katahs. As a Katahs? Who knows? Who knows, Glass? But the thing I'm really confused about there is, if I can be honest, it sounds like rules on top of rules to create a bit of bloat that isn't really needed and doesn't actually give you better choices. It just gives you kind of more things to keep in mind. Am I being too cynical, or are the Katahs actually a really cool, innovative thing to add to the Custodes?
Now, I think that's a really good question from someone that isn't too familiar with the game of Warhammer 40k, and you're seeing new rules being thrown at you, and you don't really understand the rules you already had, and now there's more on top of them, and it might seem like this is all a little bit too much. And certainly, when you read through the Warhammer community article explaining how the Katahs and the martial stances and the shield hosts interacted with all of that, it was a little bit confusing. But it's actually relatively simple. Basically, you have access to 6 possible Katahs, and all of them have 2 stances. You select one stance to be the first one you'll use, you select another stance to be the second one you'll use, and you select a third stance to be the third one you use. And then in turn 1, you look at the first Katah you're using, and you choose either stance 1 or stance 2. All of these stances just give you a bonus, typically to movement or the dice you need to roll or re-roll or whatever, because those are literally the only 2 modifiers in 40k to play with. And then in turn 2, you can either choose the other stance from that same martial Katah, or you go to the second martial Katah, and then you can choose stance 1 or stance 2. And then that just repeats. So from the second Katah, you can either use the other stance, or go to Katah number 3, use stance 1, stance 2, and then in turn 4 you have to use the other stance. Now, if you are rushing through your Katahs, this does mean you can end up in turn 5 not being in one of your Katahs, but that is what it is. And then these do interact with the shield host ability that we're about to talk about in a moment, and essentially all the shield host ability does is gives you a super turn. It activates both of the stances in a specific Katah and gives you 2 extra traits which are unique to the shield host. It's actually very simple, and because it has to be decided before the game begins, you've already decided what you're going to do. This is actually a good thing, in my opinion, as it's going to promote you knowing what you're doing with your list. In 40k, you shouldn't just throw together whatever units and not have a plan. Generally, if you're taking, let's say, the Virtus Praetors in here, do you give them salvo launchers or do you stick with the Hurricane Bolters? Well, that's a decision you need to make, and how do you make that? Because these are 2 different weapons that want to do different things and be pointed at different targets. Well, to make that decision whilst list building, you need to know what the rest of your army does, and then you can decide between those 2 weapons what you want your Virtus Praetors to do. And it's exactly the same with martial Katahs. Don't be afraid, it's simple, I promise.
Wow. So before we get abstracted away into, the stratagems and the relics that go with the specific data sheets, I know that every army in 40k has army-wide rules, which if you take everything from a specific keyword, the superfaction keyword, blah, 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 you get these rules. What are those in the Adeptus Custodes case?
When it comes to army-wide rules, they're kind of all the things you'd expect. So troops get OBSEC, that's pretty standard, although do note for the rest of the Custodes, not everything is OBSEC now, it's only the troops. The Adeptus Custodes models also have a 4-up invuln, much like they did in the last edition, and you're limited to 1 shield captain per detachment, which is honestly fine. You're probably not going to be taking them unless you're playing Crusade, to be honest with you. Then on the Anathema Psychanos side, the Sisters of Silence, if you don't know that, they are good at killing psychers, and they are good at not dying from being psychicked. That's pretty much their jam.
That sounds pretty good. Okay, and the other thing, before we jump into the datasheets, the shield hosts. What are those? And I guess for me as a beginner, what is kind of the default one? Like the one that you can safely pick and rounds out your army no matter what you're doing. When you've just got the models you've got, you're not building in a certain way. What should I take for the shield host as a default pick, do you think?
Now that's a great question, Glass. Thank you for asking. I'm a big fan of the whole take all comers default pick. Something that you can pick to know that you're safe when playing the army. Now, first off, I would say, quite literally, the default pick is Emperor's Chosen, because it actually goes on to say that if you don't want any of these specific shield hosts to represent the fluff of your army, then you default to being Emperor's Chosen. Almost as if you went to a tournament and you said, I'm running Shadow Keepers, and you weren't painted as Shadow Keepers, they would say, no, you have to be Emperor's Chosen. Quite strange. However, I think that actually a very good shield host that everyone should consider is the Solar Watch. And the reason I'd say the Solar Watch is because they're doing something that you're going to need to do as Custodes. Custodes have acceptable long-range shooting, depending on the army you're playing it into, but at some point, you need to be charging. And I'd say that they are one of the shield hosts that allow you to do some interesting charge shenanigans, and anything that makes charging easier is pretty good. I'd also say if you're going to take them, the Warlord trait is a must with them, as it allows you to advance and charge in a 6-inch bubble around the Warlord.
Phenomenal. Wow. Such amazing information. Thank you, Glass. You're a wonder to behold. Truly, what does that mean, by the way? That thing you've got. I don't know if the viewers can see it. It might be too low, but what does that PNC? Is that me, but better? Are you the better version of me? Chat, comments, what does PNC stand for in this instance? I don't know. But if you guess right, it will amuse me that you guessed right. So drop a comment. If you have no tactical advice for me in Custodes, tell me what PNC means instead. Thank you.
That's right, Glass. I am you, but in the future, and therefore better, because we are getting better every day.
Okay, but let's crack on into the data sheets. I'm really excited to see this because Custodes are, I think, an amazing beginner army, because they're just normal dudes, but you don't need many of them. So they're a great army to collect as a beginner. You know, you can get smaller model count armies with knights, for example. I don't need to plan out on a whiteboard how, a hobby project to complete this army. I can just say, yeah, screw it. 20 dudes, there you go, whatever. It's a kill team roster, right? So I'm really excited for whatever you might be able to tell me in regards to possibly one of the best starter armies out there. And, you know, they look pretty cool as well. I also have some cool proxy ideas, but that's going down the hobby route, and I hate hobby, so let's move on. So, Glass, let's dive into the HQ choices. I know they obviously have this new Blade Master champion here. I hear he's good. Could you tell me why? Trajan Valoris, Pimp Master of the Galaxy, I'm sure he's still the go-to choice. Bad Boy back here, who's the Watch Master. That sounds Death Watch. Custodes Captain, let's say. I'm just guessing at names here. On the jet bike, is he a go-to? Hit me with your knowledge.
The first thing to keep in mind, Glass, is when looking at the HQ options is this possibility here for the Captain Commanders. These are the upgrades you can give any of the regular non-named shield captains, and the only one I throw out there is, as you can tell, I'm a big fan of the idea of charging a lot. So Swift as the Eagle for 15 points means that you can declare a charge in the turn in which you advance, which is really nice. First, we're going to look at the non-names, and we have 3 flavors of shield captain: vanilla, the chocolate of Alaris armor, and the strawberry of a Dawn Eagle jet bike. They all let core reroll 1s to hit within 6 inches. Do what you want with them, as they are the basic troop with a captain upgrade applied to the stat line. Blade Champion is a good pick, and also not a shield captain, keep in mind. He can kill whatever you throw him into, as he has different profiles to hit things, and he has a built-in transhuman, fight first, etc, etc. Finally, before the named characters, there's the Knight Centura, who is much like a shield captain, but for the Sisters of Silence, has upgraded stats, and instead they have a reroll wound rolls of 1 instead of hit rolls of 1. Back to Trajan Valoris, he is an absolute beast. He gives you additional CP, a 5-up Feel No Pain, reroll hit and wound roll on his aura, and has an ultra turn where he becomes essentially invincible. I'm not sure when you wouldn't take Trajan Valoris, to be entirely honest with you. He's basically a Primarch, but he's just an HQ model. We then have Valerian, the owner of the worst haircut on Terra, although his stats are now actually relatively cool, and he's basically a shield captain, but gets transhuman and a reroll for himself. Aelia is a Knight Centura with a fight first and a fight on death.
Wow, that was amazing, Glass. Thank you. You've truly drenched my brain in your knowledge fluids. That was stunning. Thank you. And troops, super important. They are arguably the most important for any 40k army, is what people tell me. Apparently some top tier competitive lists disagree with that. Awkward. Hit me with the troops.
Custodian guards still do what they used to do and at the same points cost. However, considering how you're probably going to want to run this army now, I'm not sure you have to take them. In fact, I'd probably normally say, now, don't take the guard, take what you want to actually kill things. Maybe you'll want one squad because you do want one very durable OBSEC unit, but they are by no means a must-take at this point, I feel. Prosecutors are a third the price, and they're going to be ideal for sitting on backfield objectives. The question has to become, as your points spent on guard are now freed up, do you actually want any guard, or would you rather spend those on better killing units? Now that was a very leading question. You do want to spend your points elsewhere now, I promise.
Banger. Absolute banger, Glass. Wow.
Now Wardens are custodian guards with the 6-up Fiona Pain and bodyguard rule. Alarus Custodians are capped at 6 models now, which is relevant when it comes to their stratagem, but they also have access to a relic which makes their ballistic grenade launcher strength 10, AP-4, damage D3+3, which is really nice, and I would probably say, for me personally, is a go-to relic when not on the HQ version. The Vexillus Praetor and Praetor with Alarus Terminator armor get to take one of 4 banners, each with a 6-inch aura. One provides light cover, one provides +1 attack, one grants dense cover. They're actually all really good abilities. I highly recommend, you can't go wrong taking any of those banners, but I would say that these are very expensive models. Are you going to find room in your lists to take them? Yes. Yes, you are. Again, that was a leading question, I'm sorry. But yes, you will find room in a 2,000 point list to take at least one Vexillus Praetor. Which leads us to the horrifying Venerable Contemptor Dreadnought. But there's actually something very interesting here. They are identical to last edition, except they now get the previously Forge World only ability of a -1 to damage. They are now core, and they get the Shield Host ability, just as the Forge World models did. Ancient Artifice, which is the -1 damage strat, however, is now gone, so not only do they have it core, but also you cannot play that to give them an additional -1 to damage, making them -2 to damage. That is gone. Now, Vigilators are models that are elites. I suppose you can take them if you want. Don't take them.
Wow. Wow, that was sagely advice. Are you a seer? Stunner. Stunner. Stone cold stunner. You stone cold stunned me. You put me into the ring. You did a cage match on my brain. Thank you. Now, up next, we have the fast attack. What are they?
Now, when it comes to fast attack, Witch Seekers, let's start with them as there's much less to say than with Versus Praetors. They have a cool stratagem which is called Purgation Sweep, but I don't think we're actually going to see much of these for regular play, and there's a reason for that we'll cover when we cover dedicated transports. But of course, everybody's meta is different, and if you do find yourself wanting to have 10 Flamers, then you could do a lot worse. Their Flamers are strength 4 AP -1, which is better than normal, so yeah, go for it. Or maybe you want to run them into range of Psychic armies, in which case, also interesting choice. But of course, the Virtus Praetors, lovely models if you haven't seen them, and they are the super jet bikes of the Adeptus Custodes, but I'm going to be honest, they're pretty cool. 85 points plus 5 for the salvo launchers. They're a fast unit, which otherwise Custodes are pretty lacking in. At least one squad of these should always be in every army purely for the movement. Bolters versus salvos depends on what else you're taking in the army. Of course, I personally like the salvos, but if I need to save some points, I'd happily swap the bolters and point their guns at squishier targets.
A true 360 no-scope of my knowledge, once again, Glass, thank you. And I believe up next we then have heavy support, is that right? Am I saying that right, chat? I don't know why I'm saying chat. This is a video, there's no chat. There's commenters, there's watchers. There's no chat. What am I doing? Glass, hit me.
Finally, for the datasheets, we have heavy support, which only has the one entry, the Venerable Land Raider. It can still be ignored. It's actually gone up 5 points. And because it is locked to the shield host only, that means you can't put any sisters in there. So the idea of a 10 flamer sister bomb in there isn't going to happen. And there's only one transport, so I'm going to cover that right now as well. It's a Rhino. Yeah, it's a Rhino. I mean, I guess it's useful if you want to run a squad of sisters onto a middle objective, which isn't too crazy depending on how you run your army. Maybe there's some play with the Witch Seekers in the Rhino, or perhaps even the Vigilators in the Rhino, as they would have OBSEC. But aside from that, this isn't going to be a staple of every list, let's just say.
Forge World.
When it comes to Forge World, I would say it bores me, and certainly I, as many others have been bored by the idea that Dreadnought spam is the only way to play the game in the past. I would honestly say, luckily, thanks to the updates that they've given to the Vendread in the Codex, hopefully, fingers crossed, we won't be seeing everybody saying, hey, if you want to be competitive with Custodes, you need to buy 9 Forge World models, which is obviously insane. As for the other models in Forge World, you know, it's not for me to say, but I would say, you know, just throwing it out there, you should probably look at buying 2 of the big Ares dropships, because you can link their bodies together, and that's basically a kill team board. Yes, that's going to happen in the future.
Fair point, Glass. Fair point. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Glass. Glass, PNC, whatever that means. From the future, the Grand Master Glass, if you will, Grand Master Glass. Are you in the Wu-Tang Clan, sir? Well, guys, truly astonishing knowledge from PNC Glass there. Thank you very much. It was really helpful for me, past Glass, to really absorb the Custodes, the new Custodes Codex. Really great there. Thank you. As well, a big thank you to PNC Glass. Round of applause, everybody. Again, a like, a subscribe, a comment, all that good stuff. That'd be great. And I'm not, obviously that was some dumb skit I decided to do because it makes no sense. Why would a beginner at the game tell you what to do, right? But genuinely, this is a faction that I practically have 2,000 points of, and so I probably will play in the future, as long as they're just not like a feels bad army for my opponent, you know. So please drop me a comment about where did PNC Glass go wrong in this. Give me some advice on how to play them. Yeah, like that would be awesome, please. Thank you. And finally, again, guys, if you want to see my take on a 40k battle report using the Adeptus Custodes and the Genestealer Cults and their new codexes, check that out, because if you've watched the end of this video, it is now on my channel. Absolute final thing, guys, I have a Patreon. If you want to support me there, that'd be awesome. Anyway, this has been Glass Half Dead, and my co-host, me, from 3 hours in the future, PNC Glass Half Dead.
Thank you, Glass. Thank you, listeners. This has been really great fun. I've really enjoyed the Adeptus Custodes Codex, and I suppose technically also thank you to GW for sending to me early.
I hope you've had a good day and continue to have a good day. Goodbye.